Imagine walking into a museum filled with impossible artifacts. Crowns forged before stars were born. Tablets written in languages no living species can read. And at the very center, a sword said to be older than the galaxy itself. The curator warns no one has ever touched it, that it could unravel reality if disturbed. But then, a human steps forward, smiles at the weapon, and says, "That's for my graduation." What happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about time, memory, and what humans really are. Stay with me until the very end, because the truth behind this sword is far more terrifying than legend. Back and index pointing right, do not scroll away. This is one story you will not forget. The museum had a sword older than the galaxy. The humans said, "That's for my graduation, HFY. The alien museum was silent. Not the soft quiet of peace, but the heavy, suffocating kind. The kind that pressed against the skin and made the ears ring. Light from hovering lanterns shimmered over glass cases. Each display held artifacts that defied time itself. A crown forged before stars were born. A tablet etched in languages no living species could read. And at the very center, the sword. It hovered within a containment field. Its metal was black, yet rippled like liquid. Stars seemed to flicker within the blade, as if it had stolen light from the void. The guide's voice trembled. "This weapon predates our galaxy. It is older than suns, older than matter as we know it. No being alive has touched it. For fear it will unravel reality itself." Gasps rippled through the group of tourists. Tentacled beings recoiled. Scaled visitors hissed in awe. But the human only smiled. He stepped closer, his boots echoing across the marble floor. His hands clasped behind his back, casual, as if in a familiar place. The alien curator noticed. His voice cracked with alarm. "Sir, remain behind the barrier. That sword is not a relic. It is an impossibility." The human tilted his head, squinting at the blade. His eyes gleamed with something dangerous, memory. "That," he said, pointing with a single finger, "is for my graduation." The room froze. The words slammed into the silence like thunder. The alien guide staggered back, his antennae twitching in disbelief. Murmurs rose among the crowd, like a hive waking. The human's voice grew softer, almost reverent. "I remember the ceremony, the robes, the fire in the sky, the chants. They told us we would never forget the moment we first held it." They were right. The curator's throat tightened. Cold sweat dampened his collar. This was not possible. No species in the galaxy lived long enough to remember such a thing. The human's hand twitched, as though the barrier were no obstacle, as though the sword still called to him. The guide whispered, his mouth dry. "What are you?" The human finally turned. His smile widened, but his eyes were endless void. "You would not survive the answer." The air thickened. The lanterns above flickered as if a storm had swept into the room. Visitors shuffled backward, claws and tendrils scraping the polished floor. The sword pulsed. A ripple of light coursed across its surface, bending shadows into jagged shapes. The containment field whined, strained, and cracked with a sound like splitting bone. The curator stumbled, gripping the rail with trembling hands. This is impossible. The field has never reacted before." The human did not move away. He stepped forward. The barrier hissed, but the metal of the blade leaned toward him, as if reaching. Whispers crawled through the chamber, though no one spoke. There were not voices, not words, but something older. A chorus of hunger, a chorus of memory. The human's voice was steady. "When I held it last, the galaxy had no name. We carved suns into being. We drew lines in the dark and called them borders." His fingers brushed the barrier. Sparks hissed, then fizzled. The energy field buckled like cloth torn by invisible hands. The crowd panicked. Beings surged for the exit, but the doors did not open. The museum's systems locked tight. The curator screamed, "This cannot be. Who gave you this right?" The human's gaze turned cold, burning with something beyond time. "No one gives it. No one takes it. It is simply remembered." The sword slipped free of its prison. It drifted into his palm with the weight of eternity. The air grew sharp, metallic like blood and ozone. The lights dimmed until only the blade glowed, a shard of midnight tearing through reality. The human lifted it high, and the walls of the museum groaned, as if the entire structure remembered fear. The blade hummed. It was not a sound made for ears. It sank into bone. It rattled in the teeth. It whispered into the marrow like a memory returning uninvited. The museum shook. Dust drifted from the vaulted ceiling. Display cases shattered, spilling artifacts onto the floor, relics of forgotten empires now reduced to rubble. The visitors huddled together, eyes wide, tentacles, claws, and trembling hands pressed against their own bodies as if to shield themselves. The curator forced a breath. His voice cracked, but he spoke anyway. "You are not human. Humans are young, fragile, insignificant." The human turned slowly. The sword glowed black against his silhouette, a wound in the universe. He smiled again, too calm, too certain. "Humans, yes. They are young. But I'm not only that." His footsteps echoed like drums of war. Each step bent the air, the walls trembling with unseen pressure. The curator backed away until his shell struck the wall. "There is no record of you. No mention. No proof." The human leaned close, eyes like collapsing stars. "Of course there is no record. We erased them. That was the graduation." The blade flickered, and for an instant the museum was gone. Visitors gasped. They saw instead a vast black plain stretching forever. Pillars of light rose and fell like dying suns, and countless figures, hooded, faceless, stood in a circle around a younger version of the human, each holding the same sword. The vision snapped away. The museum returned, but the floor tiles were cracked, the air sour with burnt stone. The curator fell to his knees, voice breaking into a sob. "What do you want?" The human raised the blade until it kissed the air above his head. "What I have always wanted, for the galaxy to remember what it was made for." The sword shone brighter, and the shadows bent toward it like worshippers. The sword blazed, not with fire, not with light, with memory. The museum's walls bled away, peeling like ash in the wind. The ceiling split open to reveal a sky that was not a sky, an endless void scattered with half-formed stars. The visitors whimpered, clutching one another as their bodies flickered between what they were and what they had been long before their species learned language. The curator's eyes bulged with terror. He tried to crawl, but the floor stretched like liquid beneath him, pulling him closer to the human. The human's voice was low, steady, and merciless. "You live in a galaxy of ruins. You mistake the scraps for creation. But I remember the blueprint. I remember the birth." The sword's edge carved symbols into the air itself. Each stroke burned like a brand on the universe. The marks pulsed, alive, writhing, as if they were not words but creatures that had waited to be written. One of the tourists screamed. The sound did not echo. Instead, it fell dead in the air, swallowed whole by the symbols. The human did not flinch. He raised the sword higher, and the symbols swarmed around him like moths to flame. The curator gasped for breath, his throat dry, his voice breaking. "You will unmake us." The human's smile faded. His eyes, black as collapsing suns, narrowed. "No, I will remind you." The sword came down, and the museum shattered into silence. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the skull, crushing thought, drowning breath. The museum was gone. The marble floors, the glowing lanterns, the glass cases vanished. In their place stretched a wasteland of broken stars. Fragments of suns drifted like embers. The ground was not ground at all, but a web of cracked light, shifting and alive. The visitors staggered to their feet, disoriented, their bodies flickering at the edges as though reality itself had not decided if they belonged here. Some wept. Some stared upward with hollow eyes. The curator's knees buckled. He fell, claws scraping the glowing surface. This is not possible. Where have you taken us?" The human stood tall in the center, sword in hand, its blade humming with a resonance that matched the pulse of the void itself. He did not look at the curator. He looked at the sky. "This is not where I have taken you," he said softly. "This is where you always were. Your galaxy is only a mask, a cage painted pretty enough that you never question the bars. The curator trembled. He clutched his chest, as if holding his heart in place. You built this prison? The human finally turned his gaze toward him. His eyes burned like dying constellations, infinite and empty. No, I graduated from it. The sword flared, and across the horizon, shapes began to move. Colossal figures, faceless and robed, emerged from the darkness. Each carried a blade of their own, burning with the same black fire. They walked with impossible slowness, but every step sent quakes through the broken plain. The visitors screamed. Some tried to run, but the horizon folded inward, trapping them in a shrinking circle. The human lifted his blade to the sky. The others raised theirs in answer. The curator whispered, his voice broken into a plea. Please, what do you want from us? The human smile returned, sharper this time, carved from something older than kindness. For you to remember what you were meant to serve. The circle closed. The colossal figures halted, their shadows stretching across the broken plain. Each lowered their swords, their points resting against the glowing web beneath. The ground pulsed once, twice, a heartbeat that was not their own. The visitors dropped to their knees, not by choice but by command written into the air. Their voices caught in their throats, their bodies locked in place. The curator, shaking, forced his gaze upward. What happens now? The human stepped forward, his blade humming in rhythm with the giants. He did not look cruel. He did not look merciful. He looked inevitable. Now, he said, you remember. The symbols carved into the void flared, brilliant and terrible. They spilled across the plain, wrapping around each terrified witness. Visions flooded their minds, of stars forged like sparks from hammers, of galaxies birthed in fire, of civilizations risen only to be erased when they forgot their purpose. The curator screamed as the truth poured into him, not in words, but in raw memory. The sound was swallowed by the void. When the light faded, the plain was empty. No museum, no visitors, no curator. Only the human remained, sword in hand, standing beneath an unfinished sky. The giants turned and walked back into the darkness, their forms dissolving into the endless horizon. The human lowered his blade. He whispered into the silence, his voice calm, almost tender. Another class graduated. Then he vanished, leaving nothing but the hum of creation waiting to begin again.